The Falcons Pro Bowl wide receiver Julio Jones has been rumored to be potentially traded very soon. And, this business has really picked up in the last few days. So Atlanta has asked teams that have inquired about Julio Jones for at least a first-round pick in return. Others around the leagues don't believe the Falcons will ultimately get a first-round pick for the Pro Bowl wide receiver. But there is speculation and there are reports that one team has offered a first-round pick. So that would really up the ante. One thing we did also find out is that the Falcons would prefer not to trade Jones to an NFC team, but would do so for the right price. So if you're an NFC team looking for a wide receiver, then let's say a Seattle, if you're the Seahawks and you're looking to add another wide receiver to your depth chart and you want to add a Julio Jones, you're going to have to up the ante a little bit. Man, just think about the Seahawks traded for Julio Jones. How much would they have to give up? How many draft picks would they have left? That's going to be a fun scenario to play out, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But, I think with the Julio Jones story, we need to focus on first what went wrong in Atlanta. What went wrong with Julio? What went wrong in Atlanta? What went wrong for this relationship? Because this was a team that in 2016 had an MVP quarterback. Julio Jones had arguably his best season, and he came very close to delivering Atlanta a Super Bowl. And it just seems that ever since then, this team has just been downhill. 7-9, like really bad starts to the Atlanta Falcons over the past few years have become the kings of terrible starts to begin the season. And then, they go on a run where they end up tanking whatever draft stock they might have had. Which is it's reverse tanking. So it doesn't make any sense, right? But where I think the relationship went wrong was, I think, after that Super Bowl. I think there became a time where people in the organization, the Atlanta Falcons organization, became very, complacent with what was going on. And I think Julio Jones, for a long time, has wanted to go back to a Super Bowl. He's wanted to go back to being a contender. He's wanted to go back to being on one of the best teams in the NFL. And that hasn't been the case for the Falcons in a very long time, in almost 5 years. So, Julio Jones, I think it's prudent that he wants out. I think it's good that he wants out. He's 32 years old. He's not getting any younger. He's on what might be his last big contract. He still can produce, but he's been a little injury prone last few years. So even he knows his time is running out as this dominant wide receiver in the league. So if you're Julio Jones, right now is the perfect time to want out and to go chase a ring. Right now is the perfect time to want out and to go at least get a fresh start somewhere else. Because if we're being honest, nothing's going to happen in Atlanta for the next 2 to 3 years. If we're being honest, the Atlanta Falcons are in a complete rebuild mode. Yes, they still have Matt Ryan. Yes, they still currently have Julio Jones. But what else do they really have to build on? That defense is not going to get better next year. The other wide receivers, pretty good. But they're not Julio. Julio's already made it clear. He was on Undisputed. Shannon Sharp called him live on Undisputed and asked him point blank, Julio, are you going to be in Atlanta next year? He said, nah, I'm out of there. Keeping it real, just like we do right here. But I don't blame Julio Jones for wanting out. I think it's good for him. It's a good decision for his career to want out because he's given the Falcons like a decade of his career, a decade of performance, a decade of dominance. And they got close to a Super Bowl. They weren't able to finish. And it's unfortunate because that was a great team in the Falcons that went on that run. That was a great team. Julio Jones, again, was playing some of the best ball of his career. Just didn't happen. Now, I do think that if you're a team looking for Julio, you have to be careful with, what you give up and the situation that you put yourself in. Like, let's say the Ravens. I'm a Ravens fan, and the reason that I have been very much against getting Julio from the get-go is because, one, the price it would take to get him, in my opinion, would be too much. the contract that he already is on, which is paying him somewhere around between, I believe, $16 to $20 million this year, and just the overall fit in the offense. I think Julio Jones would, and the Ravens offense would fit, like, that would not be a good connection for either team, because I think Julio Jones needs to be in a place where they can throw the ball more often than Ravens do. And it's not, sorry about that. It's not a thing about, oh, Lamar Jackson can't throw the ball. No, Lamar Jackson is arguably the most efficient passer in the NFL. That doesn't have anything to do with it at all. What it has to do with is the fact that the Ravens don't throw the ball enough because they don't need to, because they have such a great run game, because they have such a great dynamic player in Lamar Jackson. And that's what we need to remember. If you're a Ravens fan, especially, that's what you need to remember. I know the Ravens right now, the reports are that they are out on Julio Jones. It's not happening. And I'm happy it's not happening. Because, honestly, if we were going to trade away a first-round pick for Julio Jones or a second-round pick or whatever, or multiple picks for Julio Jones, I would have much rather have seen the Ravens trade up in the draft to get a young guy like Devonta Smith, who fell to number 10. I would have much rather preferred that than, going out and getting a 32-year-old Julio Jones on a pretty large contract that would be a weird scheme fit. Because I think Devonta Smith, the good thing about him would have been that it would have cost the Ravens in draft picks similar amount, but they would have had him for 5 years at least, and they would have had him for, very cheap. They also would have had him at a young age. And when you have a player like that at a young age and he's developing, that's when your offense can develop as well, because Julio Jones needs to be a plug-and-play guy, kind of. Julio Jones needs to be in an offense that already throws the ball a lot and that he can help dominate on. I just don't think that would have been the Ravens, which is why, as a fan, I'm happy that we're out on Julio Jones. Now, don't get me wrong. If we ended up getting him, I would have rooted for his success. I just would not have expected, the dominance that could have been on, like, another team. Like, imagine if Julio Jones went to the Chiefs. That Julio Jones is going to dominate because the Chiefs throw the ball, like, 35 to 40 times a game. Thanks for watching this video from Real Take Sports Talk. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Also, remember to check out our live show every single Thursday at 8 p.m. right here on the YouTube channel. And remember, keep it real.